Welcome to China Tech Talk, the weekly discussion of technology and startups here in China. I am John Artman, editor-in-chief of Techno.com, and as always, I'm joined by Matthew Brennan, founder of China Channel. So this week we're talking with Charlie Moseley, who is a developer at Dragon's Nest in Chengdu. And we talk a lot about PUBG, one of the biggest games of 2017. And we also talk a little bit about why it's, number one, so big in China, and why it will remain so big in 2018. And Charlie is perfectly positioned to talk about all of this. He previously, he's been working in the games industry for quite a long time. As we'll find out, he used to be in Hong Kong and now has been in Chengdu for many, many years, working with Chinese developers, creating games for the Chinese audience and for international audiences as well. But it's very clear that that he is not only a passionate developer but also a passionate player, and so this is able to give him an understanding of both the Western markets as well as the Chinese markets when it comes to playing video games. And I think that PUBG is a really good kind of entry point into it. So PlayerUnkown's Battleground. In a lot of different ways, it's a really interesting example of kind of this cross-pollination of culture where, as we mentioned, there's one very famous phrase in English that has been translated into Chinese, and it's become a bit of a meme here in China, just as it has become a meme globally as well. And then, of course, looking at Steam, which is the world's largest video game distribution platform, and their presence here in China. They've been available to Chinese people for quite some time. They've been accepting Union Pay and WeChat Pay for quite some time, but they were never that big until PUBG. And so one of the big questions now is what's going to be their status in China? What are they going to are they going to have pressure to conform to local regulations as other cultural product producers have, or are they going to be able to kind of stay under the radar and maybe just hopefully be forgotten and replaced by Tencent's WeGame platform? And with that, we give you Charlie Moseley. Well, Charlie, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So the question that we'd like to ask all of our guests, especially when they're coming on for the first time, is to tell us about your China story. How did you get here, and what are you doing now? Sure.
I'm an American. I'm from Washington, D.C. I work in technology, games specifically here in Chengdu. I've been in China since late 2005, so quite a long period, and I've been working in technology since 2010 is when I started to get into app development with some local developers here in Chengdu. And after about a year, it went from app development into game development. So from about 2011 or so to now in primarily mobile games.
What types of mobile games? Any names that we would know?
So I was co-founder of Tap for Fun, which you may have heard of, which is a mid-core strategy game developer here in Chengdu. A lot of online multiplayer strategy games, kind of Clash of Clans-ish games, like within that niche. But the last 18 months, I've been working with a different developer and working not just on mobile games, but also on PC games, and not just on development, but also on publishing. So it relates a little bit more to the topic that we're talking about today. Working with foreign developers and foreign products and introducing them into China and such.
Well, I'm curious. So before we get into that, why Chengdu? So you basically started in China in Chengdu, and you've stayed there the entire time?
Yeah, actually, I started in Hong Kong. I lived in Hong Kong before I came to China, and then I came to Chengdu, and I just kind of preferred Western China in general. I thought that people were friendlier. It was a little bit more undeveloped, kind of more cutty. It seemed like it was changing more quickly, and it was just more of a dynamic setting that suited me, I guess. I also thought that there was a lot of potential in Chengdu in particular, and the local culture in Western China and in Sichuan was just kind of endearing to me for whatever reason. But almost coincidentally, Chengdu has grown into be a tech hub of Western China, and so that has played a major part in keeping me in Chengdu.
For those of our listeners that don't know, Chengdu has a reputation for gaming, right? It's definitely one of the gaming hubs of mainland China.
Certainly does, yeah. I would say like Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Chengdu in that list.
Yeah. Cool. And today we're going to cover, well, we want to talk about one of the biggest games of the year. Well, it's January now, so biggest games of last year maybe in China.
Oh, I think it'll be. I think it'll be the biggest game of this year too. I think it was the biggest game of last year, and it'll be this year too.
Sure. Yeah, it seems to be. It seems to be. Incredible amount of buzz. And there's been some big movements in it recently with, well, we'll get into it later. But the game, for those of you who haven't guessed already, is PlayerUnkown's Battlegrounds.
PUBG.
PUBG, as some people call it. Charlie, can you give us a bit of background on this title? Kick off, who's behind it? Who is this player unknown in the title?
Right.
And
no, the identity of Player Unknown is completely mysterious.
Really?
No, I'm just kidding. That's a joke. No, everybody knows who he is. His name is Brendan Green. He's an Irish game developer, an independent game developer. He was originally a modder. He made a popular mod for a game which is called Arma, which is a military simulator, which has a much greater degree of realism than PUBG does. But to explain the beginning of the game, basically, he became popular online for making mods for Arma. A Korean developer named Bluehole took interest in what he was doing, and they thought they could adapt his skill set onto a game that they wanted to develop and give him full creative license to do whatever he wanted to do. And so he decided to jump on board that opportunity, and he went from, I think he was living in Brazil at the time, to Seoul, South Korea to develop this game, and spent time working with these Korean developers to build what is now known as PUBG. And in that opportunity, he was also granted the license to put his name onto the product, which is why it says PlayerUnkown's Battlegrounds, which is where the PUBG acronym comes from, which is kind of rare in the gaming industry. It's almost like Sid Meier's Civilization. There are very few game designers that have license to promote their name in that way and become iconic game design figures, but Brendan Green is one of those. And that's kind of where the story starts. I think where it gets really interesting is that the game has kind of taken the world by storm, and including China. And that's kind of really what's unprecedented in my mind, is because normally there's a large partition between Asia and the rest of the world in terms of what's popular.
So I thought that that PUBG was based on a DayZ mod, because you look at DayZ, and DayZ is quite similar in some ways with the gas versus the electricity storm in PUBG.
Oh, certainly, yeah. PUBG was not the first game of this type. There were other games of this type, and furthermore, PUBG is part of a much larger movement of survival games, particularly games which were in early access on Steam. So there has been, I'd say over the last 18 months or so, I mean, maybe even longer than that, 2 years, just a big movement of games which are all kind of experimenting in this survival space. So games that, rather than being about Team A versus Team B, it's about just stay alive at all costs. So there are a ton of games within this niche, and DayZ is one of them.
Okay, and it's for those of the audience not familiar with the game, it's primarily a desktop game right now, but it has a mobile version as well.
Right. So for anyone who's not heard of PUBG, it's almost kind of picture like Counter-Strike. It's a third person game primarily, so the camera is behind the character which you're controlling. But it's a shooting game, so you explore the landscape, and you collect items and weapons, and you hunt and kill other players, and the last remaining player is the player who wins. And that's just the basic idea of how the game works.
Yeah, 100 people whittled down to one. How long does a typical game last?
Anywhere from 25 to maybe 50 minutes. So actually, some of the specific features of the design are really exceptional, which has lent the game a lot of success. So the way it works first is you start with 100 players, as you mentioned. They're all on an airplane. And then the airplane flies over this island, and you choose where you want to drop off. And if you've seen the movie Battle Royale, it kind of borrows a principle from that. In Battle Royale, it was all these students which are on an island, and they have to escape these danger zones lest they be killed inside them. And in PUBG, you're inside ever collapsing circles. And so to survive, you have to maintain a position inside the circle, and the circles are always moving and getting smaller. So that forces all the players to react and adjust to this moving, death line, essentially. And it puts all the players together and forces them into conflict. And so it keeps it fun and keeps it interesting and prevents people from camping or just remaining motionless or waiting for other players to come by them. So inside that 50 minutes or whatever the game is, you're pretty much promised to have something unexpected and something exciting. And that degree of unpredictability has been really endearing.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So that's my point. It's a desktop experience right now, but there is a mobile version coming out, or?
Yeah, so typically what happens when you have a big international hit like this is China will immediately begin working on how to port it to mobile, because that's the primary platform inside China. With that said, PC games are still very popular in China, and you can see this most aptly by going into a Wangba, an internet bar in China. So for anyone who lives in China, you probably have seen hundreds or thousands of these. They're pretty much on every street corner, and they're primarily for gaming. So normally when you would go inside one of these, I would say like a year ago, you would see almost everybody playing League of Legends or Counter-Strike or one of very few games. But if you go to a internet bar now, you see almost everybody playing PUBG. But even with that said, the major game developers and publishers in China, primarily NetEase and Tencent, were looking from day one to port this to mobile because that's what they do. So they have not only gotten the license for PUBG to make an official mobile version for China, but they've also reverse engineered it and made countless clones for the game, which are popular and played inside China and outside China.
Well, so I want to take a step back for a second because, as we mentioned, there have been other games before PUBG that were very, very similar. And now there are, clones, maybe you can call it, like Fortnite, for example, is becoming very popular as well.
Right.
And you mentioned earlier that going into like 2018 is probably still going to be, a leading title. So I'm curious. And so from your perspective, what exactly makes PUBG that sticky compared to other games? I mean, so why would people choose PUBG over DayZ or over Fortnite or something like that?
That's a great question. So I've played DayZ, but a lot of these games I'm not deeply familiar enough with to really give a very accurate answer on what led to their downfall. But my observation has been that each of these games have been afflicted with some kind of major problem. So in the case of DayZ, I think it's been unpopular monetization methods, bugs and crashes, performance issues with the game. Those issues have also afflicted PUBG quite significantly, but PUBG seems to have recently overcome a lot of those problems. But pretty much all the competitors for PUBG have been early access games, like Ark and Rust, so these types of games typically are very unpolished, unfinished products, which PUBG was also until very recently. PUBG only went into version 1.0, I think about 2 months ago. It just exited early access in December of 2017. So prior to that, PUBG itself was kind of, filled with bugs, filled with performance problems. It didn't run well on a lot of computers. And so this has kind of been the norm for this type of game. So the whole niche kind of has an experimental feel to it. And so that makes it exciting, but also disappointing for a lot of people who want something stable, which performs well. And so it wasn't really until very recently that PUBG was able to overcome this obstacle and exit out of that. But if you look at these games on Steam, like DayZ, for example, the reviews are not great. They're very mixed. So you see a lot of people who are very enthusiastic about the game, but you see a lot of people who really don't like it also. So for, whatever reason, PUBG has been able to get through this. I think I attribute a lot of that to, obviously the vision and brilliance of the designer, Brendan Green, PlayerUnkown, but also to the competence that Blue Hole has shown in traversing this minefield of issues to deal with. The expectation put on PUBG really could not be any higher. There are so many people who are expecting so much of this game, and it's pretty encouraging how they've managed this pressure. They've done a really great job, I think, in improving the game, and that's what leads me to say that 2018 will probably see PUBG as being the largest game or one of the 3 largest of the year, just because it's advancing so quickly.
Well, so just to unpack something really quickly, because so if you're not familiar with Steam, the thing is like once when you're in Steam storefront and you click into a title, automatically it's going to show you a video if the developer has uploaded a video that'll show you some of the gameplay or some of the features. But then also it's going to on the right hand side, it's going to very, very clearly have a thumbs up. Have like a no thumb and then a thumbs down, right? And so it's basically blue, yellow, and then red. And so what Charlie was just saying is that, you know, you look at DayZ, you look at some of the other games, and immediately when you click in, you're going to see, you know, recent reviews. Are they positive, mixed, or negative? And then also just overall reviews. Are they positive, mixed, or negative? And so, you know, having mixed or negative reviews in the short and longer term, and having that so obvious to anyone who might actually be thinking about making a purchase, well, that's heavily going to affect their decision-making process. You know, and the thing is, like, the Steam market, is huge. There's so many games available, and there's so many really cool, you know, AAA games that are coming on, but also, you know, really interesting early access independent games coming on. So there's a lot of different content that game developers have to compete with, and so having mixed or negative reviews, it's going to be difficult to gain a lot of traction. But Charlie, so also I'm curious, what do you think about like the network effect of PUBG? Because I think that from my perspective, at least in the West, a lot of its success has also been because, you know, more and more Twitch streamers, more and more YouTube personalities were playing PUBG on a more regular basis.
Right. So the network effect with PUBG is, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, unprecedented. I don't think I've ever seen anything else in my life which has had a network effect like PUBG has had. Obviously, we've seen a lot of really viral games. Most of the most viral games have been on mobile just because there's a lot less friction on that platform. Everyone has a phone and everyone can download whatever game is popular. But PUBG has just been unbelievably sticky. Whether we're talking about China or, you know, the United States, so it's really just totally globally, which is amazing. So, yeah, I mean, and also what's to add on to what you said about Steam, all these games pretty much have been in early access, which is kind of a signifier of instability for average consumers. There's been a major concern on Steam in particular because Steam has chosen to, you know, give developers a way to release an unfinished product and sell it for a full price potentially to users who, you know, are in acknowledgement of the game's, you know, still in development status. So when you sign on for PUBG prior to 2 months ago, you knew that the game wasn't finished, the game would have problems, and you were electing to play the game with that in mind. So that's a major hindrance to the popularity of a game normally. There's a lot of concern that an early access developer would decide to ditch the project or just take the money and leave or never really be able to finish it completely. There are a lot of games which have been on sale in Steam for years, which are still in early access and probably will never leave early access. Well, so there was always kind of a lot of doubt around PUBG because of that.
Mm. Yeah, and I think, but you know, there are you know some well-known developers now. Clay, Fail Better are the ones that come to mind because those are the ones that I play. You know, Oxygen Not Included, Sunless Sky. Those are both still in early access. RimWorld, which is very, very popular, is just recently came out of alpha, and it's been available for years in early access.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're here to talk about China, not talk so much about Steam.
Sure, but
yeah, well, actually, that's an interesting topic. Steam in China is an interesting topic in itself because Steam, as people know, is the largest PC game distribution platform on the planet. Nothing else even comes close. And until recently, Steam was kind of insignificant in China, and now Steam is huge in China just because of PUBG. So people inside China want to play PUBG, and the only way they can do that currently is through Steam. So over the last year or so, we've seen a massive increase in the number of users from China on Steam.
What are the implications of that, Charlie?
Oh, there's very many. There are quite a few implications for this. Yeah. So first of all, right. So China is the world's largest gaming market. There are more gamers inside China than anywhere else on the planet. The gamers inside China spend more money than anywhere else inside the planet just by virtue of the volume of users, not because each user spends more necessarily. But having all these Chinese users on Steam creates a great opportunity for developers from all around the planet. So let's say you make an independent game and you localize it in Chinese. Well, now you have access to potentially hundreds of millions of Chinese users, which didn't even exist on the platform prior to a year ago. So that's an incredible opportunity for the entire games industry. It also presents a problem for China because China wants to control all of the distribution and moreover wants to have control over all the culture in China. So, television is tightly controlled, internet is tightly controlled, games, movies, music is tightly controlled. I'm sure you guys just heard that hip hop and tattoos were banned from television in China just a couple weeks ago. So these kind of events have become so commonplace that now we know that all elements of culture are carefully restricted inside China. And yet Steam is this overseas, they're based in Washington State, in Seattle. It's an overseas platform, which is now very popular in China. This presents a real serious problem for China, I think, because China is going to try to find a way to shut it down and replace it with a domestic alternative.
That's typically what happens. Have we seen any signs of that yet?
The most clear sign of that so far has been Tencent renaming its Tencent game platform into WeGame, and replacing Steam just outright with that. I mean, along with that announcement, they also announced that they had acquired the license to publish some really big Western games inside China. One of those is Rocket League, which you guys may have heard of. I think it was one of the largest independent games of 2016. So hugely popular game. It's a competitive sport game where you're playing soccer with remote control cars, essentially. But anyway, hugely popular game. They acquired the rights to publish that game inside China and give it exclusive access on WeGame. And so the threat is definitely that Tencent will promote WeGame, and they now have the right to PUBG as well. And that will just make Steam irrelevant in China. But blocking Steam is also not so easy because you have such a large Steam user base on there who've already paid for the game and are playing it. And that would mean instantly cutting all those people off, which would be very unpopular.
Well, but also, I mean, Steam has been accepting WeChat Pay for some time now. And, if I go into my download settings, I can easily choose, a few different servers based here in the mainland. And so while they may have gained a lot of popularity and increased total number of mainland users, I mean, they've been active and available in the mainland for some time already.
Yeah, that's true. But it's interesting because I think when Steam got the right to do that, which I think was in 2015 or 2016, it was, not really viewed as a threat in any way, really. I think that if Steam were to try to get that now, it might not be possible. I mean, at the very least, it would be much more difficult because if we look at compare the game industry to the PC industry inside China, just for example. So if you want to publish a mobile game inside China, the amount of certification that you have to go through is incredible. It's unbelievable. You have to send a device with your app or game installed on it to certification boards who spend weeks or even months to review the game. And they review everything inside it. The game cannot include any English, nothing unharmonious. There's like a long list of things which the game cannot include. And if it violates any of these rules, they'll reject it and send the phone back to you, and you have to reapply it. It takes months. So for an independent developer, it's a really dangerous position. I mean, if you have salary and rent to pay and you're waiting for your app to be reviewed and it gets denied, I mean, it can crush a small company. So compare that amount of restriction to how it works now on Steam, where there is zero regulation. Everything on Steam is accessible inside China. So it seems clearly like there's going to be some regulation in this space. We're just not sure.
Yeah,
what form
that sounds
it'll take.
like totally hard to believe that they've let it go like that. I mean,
right? They're completely contradictory situations just because of new platforms. I mean, on mobile games, you can't show blood. You can't. I mean, they're completely censored. And on Steam, it's the opposite. I mean, PUBG itself is very violent. And actually, the central government made a comment on PUBG, which says, it violates socialist values. It doesn't suit the culture of China. And that was a big warning sign for a lot of people that PUBG was going to get banned in China. And at the time, this was a few months ago, there was a lot of discussion about would China outright ban PUBG, or would they censor it somehow? Would they change the blood to be green? Would they, add communist flags to make it harmonious? Like, how could they possibly rectify this situation? And somehow Tencent got the ability to license the game, made some almost imperceptible changes, and now the game is acceptable.
So what are they going to do with the title?
They're going to release it in China, and it's going to become an even bigger hit than it is now.
So, release it in China on PC or on mobile or on both?
Both. They're going to release it on both. It's already available in China on Steam, so there's already a massive user base playing it there. It's going to come to Wii Game. That's going to make the game a lot more popular, because one of the issues that players in China have to deal with right now is that there are no servers located inside China. And so this has created this whole other industry of internet accelerators, which in Chinese are called jiasuqi. And so it's an accessory piece of software which improves the performance of your network connection to servers outside of the Great Firewall. So you pay like 20 RMB per month, and you can select which game you're playing, and it will increase the network performance of the game you're playing. And tons of people in China who are playing PUBG, including all the expats I know who play the game, subscribe to this type of service. So having PUBG on Wii Game will eliminate this cottage industry entirely, because all the servers will be domestic. So there are some advantages for having the game on Wii Game.
It seems like this is a major thing for the industry. The way you're describing it, it seems when you go into the internet bars, everyone's playing this game now. So it seems like a bit of a big disruption to the whole industry. How's this going to impact League of Legends, Honor of Kings, other major titles?
It's a good question. It's hard to say. It is unexpected. It's very surprising to have kind of a game sort of, almost like slip through their fingers. Have a game be one that was developed overseas and become a massive cultural phenomenon in China. Very rare, very unusual, kind of unprecedented, as I said. But, the way they responded to it, I think, is exactly the way they should have responded to it, which is, Tencent can buy anything or anyone. And so if a game becomes popular in China, they license it or publish it or buy the company outright immediately. And that's exactly what they did. So this is standard operating procedure for the major Chinese publishers. If there is a massive global phenomenon, 100% they will find a way to get it in China. They will buy the company, as they did with Supercell and Clash of Clans and Clash Royale, or they will license the right to publish the game in China and have exclusive distribution ability, which they have with PUBG. So the game will continue to be probably a bigger hit in China than it is outside China, because that's the ability that Tencent has. And that's what we saw with League of Legends. League of Legends was a much bigger hit outside China before Tencent got involved. Tencent buys Riot, and now it's primarily an Asian
They could have blocked it, right? And then and just built their own version. And we've seen localized versions from NetEase and like you were saying before, adaptations of the genre have also been around.
Yeah, they certainly could have blocked it. Absolutely, they could have blocked it. I mean, it wouldn't have been hard to block it. I mean, I think everyone would have understood if they blocked it. The game is a violent, foreign, game of foreign culture. It's blocking it is something we see all the time. We see things blocked all the time here in China. So yeah, they chose not to do that, and I'm glad they chose not to block it, because it's a fun game and a ton of people enjoy it, and now they're going to make a ton of money off it.
So yeah, I mean, I guess that kind of Matt alluded to it just now, but I mean, that's kind of the question. So, with Tencent, they've decided to go with, exclusive publishing rights in China, but then there are all these clones, both on PC and on mobile. So how do you see, I mean, like, do you think that we're going to see like a mirror kind of how this genre of gaming has developed in the West here in China, where people are trying to get on to the latest trend and publish games that have a proven success rate?
Well, I'm not too optimistic on the clones, actually. And I can understand why NetEase makes a clone, for example, because they don't have rights to PUBG. And there's a massive casual user base here who is familiar with PUBG but has never played it, doesn't really know how it works. I think the clones are targeted at that demographic. But a lot of the cultural happenings around PUBG are very specific to PUBG. So one thing, you guys may have heard this slogan, 大吉大利，鸡完吃鸡, right? So it's a slogan which is incredibly popular in China. And so when people are going to play PUBG, they say this, "Chiji," which means to eat chicken. So the same slogan exists in English. This is also another really interesting thing which I find with this game. So in PUBG, when you beat the game and you're playing the English version, it says "winner, winner, chicken dinner" on the screen when you win the game, right? It's very difficult to win the game. So people usually play the game for dozens or hundreds of hours before ever getting to that victory screen. And so when you see it, people are taking screenshots of it. They're using their phone to take photographs of it. They share it on social media. And so it's become, winner, winner, chicken dinner has become like a big cultural phenomenon within the gaming industry globally. So in China, they've translated this into this Chinese line. And now that is a cultural phenomenon inside China. And so Chinese players, you see like posters which say, "Chiji" inside internet bars. It's become such a big social phenomenon inside China. And so that is very specific to PUBG. A lot of other games have actually ripped it off. The clones have, they're like "eat turkey," or, they try to like spin it in different ways, right? But this is like really kind of proprietary to PUBG. And so this is like, really to the detriment of the clones. So this is why I say like the clones, I think, are for people who are, casual observers, kind of on the fringes, but people who know what PUBG is, they want the real thing. I think that Chinese consumers and gamers more specifically have gotten, a lot more educated in, determining what they really want. And it seems like what they really want is the real thing, which is understandable. People around the world are playing PUBG. They want to play PUBG. They don't want to play a watered down knockoff. And so they're going to get PUBG now that Tencent has managed to broker this deal.
But it's also super interesting to see that cross-pollination of culture, because I think that these days it's happening less and less. As you mentioned before, the government, the Communist Party, has become much more proactive in controlling kind of representations of ideas, and controlling how and what things or memes, if you will, in the Dawkins sense of the word, how memes kind of spread throughout Chinese society, and so that cross-pollination happens less and less as video streaming sites don't play as many Western movies. They don't play as many Western TV shows and things like that. And so it's really kind of cool to see that it literally is a global phenomenon. Whereas more and more global phenomenons, it's like, okay, it's a global phenomenon except for China.
Absolutely. Yes. It is deeply encouraging to witness this for exactly the reasons which you described. Not only just because the inherent cultural differences between the East and between the West, or between China and the rest of Asia or the rest of the world, but also because how so many of these things are explicit. Like you mentioned, the government has a very real interest in controlling what is popular and controlling the culture of China. And so it's really hard to think of times when there's been a cultural phenomenon outside China and inside China at the same time. I mean, I'm really hard pressed to think of other times that this has happened. So, and it does really create an encouraging sense of unity, of cultural unity.
Recently, I was reading a couple of articles talking about cheating in PUBG. And so this is, we've just been talking about cultural unity, but maybe we'll talk about some, cultural differences as well. Traditionally, in the gaming sector in China, things like cheating or things like paying to win seem to have a stronger base here. Would you agree with that? And secondly, how has this played out with this particular title?
So 100% I agree with that. I consider that to be an inarguable point. The fact is just that there are more cheaters in China, and the reason why is because cheating is more socially acceptable in games and in gaming culture in China. And so now that we've talked about cultural unity, let's go in the other direction. Most of the global audience in PUBG is deeply resentful of Chinese players, and what they put a lot of pressure on to Bluehole to segregate the Chinese gaming community and to put them on their own servers. And this is actually very common practice within the gaming industry. If you have a mobile game or a PC game and it's primarily an online multiplayer game, and you have a Chinese audience of players and a global audience of players, typically you'll segregate the two. because to have them in one ecosystem can cause a lot of problems. And I actually have a lot of experience working with those kind of issues. And even the Chinese developers that I've worked with have primarily been of the mind that these two should be segregated. Otherwise, it will lead to problems. And one of the major problems is cheaters.
But like you were saying, I mean, part of it's because cheating is more accepted in gaming, and so I guess the flip side is that it's less accepted outside of China. And so is that really the main conflict, that that global players resent the fact that Chinese people cheat so much? And then I guess my big question is, rather than segregation, isn't it kind of the developer's responsibility to stop cheaters, Chinese or not?
Yeah, it certainly is. And the developer has made a ton of progress in stopping cheaters recently. And this has been deeply encouraging for the future of PUBG. But also, I should add that, my statement a moment ago where, there's social acceptability for cheating may be a controversial one, because there obviously are good-natured Chinese gamers as well. And there are those who are deeply opposed to cheating inside China, and those who believe that the cheaters, create a bad impression for the Chinese gaming community. And there have even been stories of people getting attacked inside internet bars who are cheating. So Chinese players are playing PUBG. They're using, illicit software to hack the game and to ruin the experience for other players. Other Chinese players observe that and then attack the guy who is cheating. And this has been reported in Chinese media. So there are a lot of good Chinese players also. And it's not that all Chinese players just kind of has this nonchalant attitude towards cheating. A lot of them really resent it. And so that is good to hear. But with all that said, simply put, the vast majority of cheaters inside online games, including PUBG, come from China and Russia, these two countries in particular. So these are the ones that game developers are really mindful of. In maybe not just segregating the communities, but developing tools to shut them down. And cheating has been one of the major issues in PUBG. I would say probably the major issue in PUBG over the last 3 months. And they have had a lot of success in handling this problem. I think they've banned something like 500,000 users, in that ballpark. Just an enormous number of users. But the problem in China is that if you ban people from the game, they just create another Steam account and get right back into the game. So, and a lot of cheaters are doing this actually to make money. So when you win in PUBG, you acquire an in-game currency, and then you can use that to purchase items, and then you can exchange those items on a marketplace. So they're cosmetic items, so they don't actually affect your performance inside the game. But because the game is so popular, there's still a market for those items. And so what a lot of the cheaters are doing, aside from just trying to ruin someone's day, is trying to win the game, to acquire this currency, to purchase these items, to sell them on a market. And it can be very profitable to do this. If you're cheating and playing PUBG all day, you can make many times the average income in China per month just by doing this. And so this is what the developer's up against.
So I guess, just really quickly, so how exactly are people cheating? What kinds of software are they using, and how does that interact with the game?
So it's third-party software, which is custom-made, and it allows you to do things like shoot through walls. It allows you to observe the position of all the players, regardless of where they are in relation to you. It allows you to traverse great distances in a short period of time, as opposed to having to run across the map, things like this. So it's kind of a cat and mouse game. The way that it works is the hack developers will develop a piece of software. It'll work for a while. PUBG will detect use of this software. They'll try to figure out a way to shut it down. They'll shut it down. It'll be modified. It'll be redeveloped. So it's a constant cat and mouse game.
Do you not see this in South Korea, where the game's from?
You mean cheating?
Yeah.
Not in any large number. I'm sure there are cheaters, all around the world, including South Korea, but cheating is not enough of a phenomenon in South Korea to warrant much of a discussion that I've seen.
So we look at Steam's monetization model, or PUBG's monetization model, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, because I've never actually played it myself. Is that you buy the game, and then there are maybe there is some in-game. Is there in-app purchases for PUBG?
No, but you can guarantee that there will be in the Tencent version.
Right. So that's what I was going to ask. And so on Steam, you have you just pay the full price up front, and then you can play. There's no subscriptions. Right. There's no IAP or anything like that. But then looking at Tencent's version, I mean, as you just said, we're probably going to see other monetization models.
Right. So the business models which are used in the game industry inside and outside China are vastly different. China has always been champion of the free-to-play business model. And the reason why is because China has a long history of piracy and of people not paying for software. So if you're trying to sell a game inside China, it's probably not going to work. The game is probably going to be pirated, and it's going to be distributed for free, and you're going to make nothing off of it. So Chinese game developers have long known this, for decades. So China was really kind of the forebear of this whole business model, which eventually went global when Apple developed the App Store in 2009, 2010, around that time. So, and actually a lot of big free-to-play game developers have closely analyzed the Chinese market in particular to try to glean some wisdom from how Chinese developers have been able to effectively use this business model. So to answer your question, though, PUBG is sold for $30 outside of China. And this is a typical business model for the game industry outside China. You measure the success of a game in unit of sales. But that is not the case inside China. Almost every popular game inside China is free to play and is monetized through in-app purchases, usually through items or equipment or in-app currency. In a lot of cases, it's just cosmetic items, as it is in League of Legends. So that is the business model which China is going to use here, pretty much unquestionably, because it's a better way to make money for China, because there's a lot less aversion to making these types of in-app purchases inside China than there is in the United States, for example. To also give you another example, if you guys remember way back in the day, like the QQ Kongjian, do you guys know about this? Like the QQ rooms, right? Yep. So before WeChat was popular, everybody was on QQ inside China, and you had this avatar, this 2D cartoon avatar, which is called your QQ room, I guess. I'm not sure how to translate it into English, but it was an avatar of you, and you could spend money on cosmetic items to, beautify your room. You could pay real money to get, jeans with glitter on them and, just fairly ridiculous looking things to customize your 2D avatar. This was a massive marketplace inside China. People were really willing to spend a lot of money and a lot of time on customizing this virtual room. This kind of behavior is kind of stigmatized in the West. We kind of look at these kind of purchases as being, foolish and wasteful and kind of not really bringing any value at all. But China and Asia doesn't really see it that way. It seems like a legitimate purpose. You're, making your avatar look cool, and that's cool. So just the cultural interpretation of this type of behavior is very different. And so in-app purchases are just a lot more common and more acceptable inside China.
Well, it's funny because I think the closest offline analogy I think that comes to mind is cars. You look at the amount of customization that people do to their cars. They're willing to pay extra for, shiny pink chrome, or, they have like all this like these accessories inside the car, or they have like stencils or, pasted on pictures and stuff like that, like things that I think would seem ostentatious and tacky in the States, at least, whereas in China it's perfectly normal to do that.
Absolutely. I don't even take note of Hello Kitty Ferraris anymore.
Right. The one in my neighborhood is a chrome pink BMW that's around everywhere.
100%. This is world capital of ostentatious cars. But it's just a cultural difference, So in any case, for sure, Tencent will pursue a free-to-play approach here, and it will be the right decision for them to make. The idea is to try to get as many players into the game as possible, and then rely on the whales, which is the tiny fraction of players which are willing to spend a ton of money on in-app purchases, and that will almost certainly be what happens here, and the game is going to be highly profitable for Tencent. So
okay, but Charlie, the game's already popular in China with the other method. Like, people are paying up front for it now.
Yes, that's true, but this is a major anomaly. I mean, this is unprecedented. We've kind of never seen this happen before. So, I mean, could it be the beginning of a change in the business model in China? I mean, it could be, but I'm not convinced of that based on what we've seen here. I think that Tencent is not convinced of that either. But who knows? I could be wrong. I mean, maybe they decide to sell the game for 80 RMB. That just seems very unlikely.
No. I guess my point is it's it's not as black and white perhaps as we thought before. Yeah, I totally agree. Tencent's not going to do that, but it's interesting that people are willing to pay upfront for the game, right? How much is it to download it from Steam?
The popularity of PUBG actually brings a lot of these things into question, and I think that's what makes it such an interesting, topic of conversation. Is because it really makes us re-examine a lot of the things which we thought were true.
Right.
So it's hard to say, but I think that it costs about 70 RMB on the Steam China store, which is half of what it costs outside China. So,
so about $12.
I can't say enough just how unusual it is for this overseas game to become such a phenomenon. And I mean, a lot of Chinese people I know have just registered on Steam. Have just bought their first game on Steam. They've never used this platform. They didn't know what Steam was prior to PUBG. They're not browsing Steam. They're not buying games on Steam. They just have one game on Steam.
Yeah, and the thing is, I didn't start using Steam. I started using Steam maybe 2 years ago or something like that. I've been playing video games since I was little, but never used Steam for a variety of reasons. And the great thing about Steam is that, if you are a gamer, this is it's an all-you-can-eat buffet almost. I mean, obviously,
it's incredible. It's the best gaming platform on the planet, in my opinion. I think the App Store is really great too. So there, you can make arguments for different platforms, but Steam is an unbelievable platform inside China, especially if you're an expat living in China like we are, and if you play games and you have a PC or a Mac, then absolutely get on Steam. One of the reasons why Steam is so great here is because they have a regional store. So there is a China store on Steam, and you can set your region to China, and that knocks the prices down half for anybody who lives here. You can use UnionPay to check out, to make purchases, and everything costs half as much here as it does overseas.
Right.
Yeah. If you eventually leave China, if you go back to your home country, you can change the region to your home country and still have your entire library. So all the purchases are valid no matter where you are. So it's a tremendous value if you're in China.
And it's a little bit different as well from what Apple has done with their App Store, where your purchases are tied to which regional store you actually downloaded them from, and it's also kind of funny because I use a Mac, and the Mac App Store, there's a lot of apps that you can download for free and purchase, but even then they actually in the App Store, Apple advertises games, and I see these games, and they're about the same price, maybe a little bit more expensive, maybe a little bit less expensive than Steam. But for me, it's well, why in the world would I buy a game on the Mac App Store? Number one, Macs aren't really, optimized for gaming. So if I really want to play games, I'm going to use a PC. And if I buy it on the Mac App Store, then I can't use it again. I have to purchase it again if I want to play it on the PC. Whereas with Steam, I can play it on any platform.
Steam is running circles around the Mac App Store. The Mac App Store is obviously not just for games. It's primarily for apps. It includes some games as well. But the Mac App Store was made to emulate the success of the iOS App Store, and it's utterly failed to do that for many reasons. So the Mac App Store is kind of its own interesting topic, but Steam has flourished while the Mac App Store has basically floundered.
All right, well, Charlie, I think that's about all the time we have for this episode. But before we go, where can our listeners find you?
Look for me on ChengduGaming.com. I have a podcast and a website. It stands for the Chengdu Gaming Federation. We also host local multiplayer events here in Chengdu and have done so since mid-2015. It is primarily a group of independent game developers, people who work in the game industry, and just game enthusiasts here in Chengdu. So check that out. We often talk on our podcast about things exactly like this. We recently recorded a podcast about game platforms in China, which included some discussion about Wii Game and Steam in China and such. So check that out.
Great. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you left a review on iTunes. If you're in Overcast or in Pocket Cast, you can just tap on that star button and it will recommend this episode to your network. Alternatively, if you want to get in touch with either Matt or I, you can find links to our Twitter profiles as well as our LinkedIn profiles in the show notes.